Good morning. Thank you all for braving the cold. For those that are here in the room, I appreciate you coming out to join us today. My name's Christy Dar. I'm currently serving as the Interim Vice President for University Human Resources. And I want to welcome you here today. Appreciate that I know I've heard from some areas that they're having viewing parties back home in the office for this event, so hopefully you're enjoying your popcorn. Sorry for those of you in the room, I didn't provide popcorn here. So I want to take some time to talk a little bit about what we're going to cover today. First off, I appreciate everybody's feedback that have helped us to get to today. And your continued feedback. I'm going to ask for more of it after our time together today. Today's town hall will be a little bit different than some of the other town halls. I have a lot of information to share. I want to make sure we get through that. I'll save some time for questions at the end, but I want to be thoughtful to get to the information that you all have been asking for. As we dig deeper, I also expect over the next week to provide more information in the worksite FAQs online to help provide additional context to the information that we might not be able to cover here today given the time constraints that we have. But I want to begin by saying many of you are still sitting here on, has the president decided or not, right? Where are we today? And so I want to talk through where we are from an IELT perspective. The supergroup is preparing a report to share with the president yet this week, and it will be released publicly for everyone when it is sent to her. I come here today as an effort to provide more information as a result of our last town hall, as a result of PNS Council feedback, as a result of all of your feedback online. But we're continuing to work through what that next path forward is. So is the answer yes, no? I don't think we're operating in that mindset from a path forward. The president is looking to figure out what can we possibly accomplish in the timeline we have. Is that a phased approach? What can we do to be successful and be thoughtful about the impact that has to staff as we do that? I want to acknowledge that today I won't be answering questions about the finance model. Soon to be announced, Interim Senior Vice President Kane will be hosting her own town hall here very soon. And so look for that updated information from ISD. Today we focus on the HR model, the job duties, and the potential next steps overall. Still recognize that many of you in this room wear many hats. You may do HR, finance, and some other, what I'll call, et cetera duties for today. We're going to focus on the HR and hopefully provide some clarity. But what I heard is that you want more detail, and I'm excited to be able to give that to you once I find my mouse. Is it up there? That's the problem. Literally, there it's coming. Sorry about that. Okay. This is the biggest question. How will all this impact me? Again, that's a personal answer. I can't answer that question for you. I won't be able to answer it fully after today. But I'll take on some of these questions as we work through our time together and provide you with the latest information that we have. Some things will still be left unknown, but hopefully we have a little bit more clarity. So here's an outline of what we're going to talk through. I want to still talk about the why. I want to spend a lot of time on the HR model, but the bulk of our time will be on clarifying the HR roles and responsibilities. Did everybody get a handout when they came in with the job profile information? Raise your hand if you need one. Okay. We'll get you one. You want to make sure you have that to reference. If you are viewing from your office, go back and reach out or see that ISD email that you got yesterday, or go to the worksite website. to click on that job profile information. You may want to reference it as we're working through the presentation today. I won't be sharing the information that's in these handouts on the slides specifically. We'll talk through the draft transition process and next steps. So the why. This is really important. We've tried to simplify the goals for the HR service delivery in terms of improving the employee experience, supporting the unit's mission, and enhancing our culture of service. So when we think about improving the employee experience, it's both for the employees inside the model as well as, and more importantly, all of us as employees, right? We haven't had that opportunity to think about how we can collectively work together from an HR space to improve the employee experience. And that's what we're hoping that this model will provide to us. Improving HR service delivery should create efficiencies in the basic operations of an employee's career, from hiring to job changes to life events and support all the way through retirement. Again, that life cycle approach that we're taking in the HR model. These efficiencies that we will gain will create capacity to tackle the larger needs of employees at Iowa State. Faster recruiting, recognition and rewards programs, things that we haven't had the chance to talk about. And so by being able to spend less time talking about how do we do something, we're able to focus on the programs that support our employees. So as we think about supporting the unit's mission, the model is purposely designed to have frontline support locally located to match to specific units similar today. Many of you have an HR liaison today that you might call. You may have someone in your unit that you seek out for special assistance on employee transactions or how to hire someone. And much like today, we want you to have a point of contact. One of the key elements of this model is having the local HR folks that will be empowered with UHR support to deliver the services more directly. Okay, so what does that mean, Christy? So that really means that when I put the org chart up here in a little bit, it doesn't go all the way up through UHR and back down and up and back down and up and back down, right? It is really those folks, whether it's the HR coordinator, HR partner, that are likely initiating or approving those transactions. And very few things come centrally for that final approval. So they're empowered, they're trained in how to do that and how to support the unit, and those are taking place locally. As we think about enhancing our culture of service, similar to above, the empowered local support will improve the overall employee experience. You know, today, how someone gets reclassified, again, can sometimes feel like a back and forth, up and down, around the world, as everyone is trying to understand what to do. We want that advice to happen locally. Services will be measured. Folks will be accountable and will be able to then continuously improve. Okay, I've talked about this before in some audiences. 7119 is a milestone, not a destination, right? In many ways, we can't fix everything in this first phase, but we can learn from it and the process and how we get better and how we support staff in that process. And so I think Iowa State's moving to this kind of continuous improvement culture, and this model will help support that. We have great people doing this work today, and this is designed to empower them to be more successful, to have professional focus on our people, and to be able to do more than we do today to improve the employee experience. So we talked about this last time we were together. See many of you as familiar faces, as being in the previous one with Town Hall with Interim Senior Vice President Kane and I. So in current state, as we look through this, again, training and development is not just about how we get things done, but it's about what are the right things to do. What are the best practices? How do we apply them? And how do we help lift folks up in that future state? The process efficiency and approvals, I've already alluded to that, right? Those are happening at a local level, therefore creating efficiencies, letting folks work on the things we can't seem to get to from an HR perspective. Programs we've never had the opportunity to implement. I think I mentioned it the last time. Outside of the soup org collection, I couldn't tell you who a supervisor was. So I couldn't even tell you who a supervisor was who should get training, right? By having Workday, by having that data available, we're able to target communications, able to encourage folks' development in a more powerful way than we've been able to. Many of you may have been doing that at the local level, but when there are those institutional approaches, we haven't been able to take those. Today, many of you support a variety of departmental functions, and many only touch a transaction once a year, sometimes less than that. And that requires looking up the policy, processes, relearning, getting yourself up to speed, what changed since the last time I did this. Maybe your points of contact through the process have also turned over and changed. So we spend a lot of time kind of reconnecting with that information. You may still do it right in the process, but it's not something that you're just relatively familiar with because you haven't had the opportunity. Maybe your department's small, maybe it just doesn't happen as frequently, those types of things. And we want to flip from that transaction to the employee focus. We want to move away from how to accomplish something to having conversation about what's the right thing to do and what's possible. How do we leverage our policies to help support us? And the engagement in the mission is so critical. What's the right thing to do for the department, this unit, this division, and Iowa State as a whole? We need to support each other through that process. So in visiting with P&S Council this week, they said we'd really like to see a benefits slide. And I wanted to do this from a different approach in terms of, we know there's lots of folks looking at this from different lenses. We're all employees, okay? So we can likely all relate to the yellow box. But many of you are maybe thinking about this as yourself as an employee as well as a supervisor. And then there's some of you, and I said HR staff, right? In terms of folks that would be in the model as well as in UHR. Okay, so the creation of the employee experience versus these independent areas. You know, last time I told the story about someone transferring from one college to another and feeling like they might as well totally changed organizations. And we need to create some underpinning to help folks know what to expect in that process. Consistency on policies and best practices. You heard though, we don't do that this way over here in this department. I got one of those emails the other day. Hey, can you help me out? I'm being told that this isn't how we do this here, and I was an employee in a different department for many years. So creating that consistency for the employee experience. Quicker recruitment response for staff. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. And clear direction on who to call. Right now, oftentimes that's just a connection. I know someone, the last time they were willing to help me, I might seek out that same person in this time when I have a question. Or they're looking at the UHR call sheet today and they're calling us. And oftentimes we're saying, here may be the best person locally for you to connect with on that issue. From a supervisor's perspective, we want the model to be responsive with quicker turnaround times, be able to make sure that the approvals happen outside of a central perspective. Everything doesn't go all the way up through the model. And so those folks are highly trained and can provide you advice. An opportunity to seek advice from an expert. Sometimes the supervisor feels embarrassed, right? I don't even know who to call. And in that quest to figure out who to call, I may be showing that I don't quite that I have questions, right, that I don't quite know. And so being able to say, we're here for you, call us, we want to help. Again, some of that's already happening in your areas, but other places we might be able to strengthen that. And the HR staff, connection to the profession and to the mission. What I hear from folks that do HR in the field is some of it's HR and some of it's this other stuff. Even from an HR liaison, the college may give them other non-HR related duties or may not understand some of the challenges that they have from a professional perspective. Defined accountabilities, that's both across the HR function, both central and distributed. We want that robust feedback loop, so we're constantly improving to help support the institution, and coordinated professional development. So now let's get into talking about the model. When I was last here, I was looking into a variety of items that were still open for me and how they fit into the model. Been doing some of that research, and I'm happy to be able to share more today, and some of that's reflected in the changes that you'll see. So some of those things that I was looking at were graduate assistant hiring, international support, duly administered departments, recruitment, and how this model works with the provost office, the centralized items versus decentralized items. So been working through a majority of these things and want to share an update with you. So this is what I shared the last time and what you've seen now in 2 town halls, the solid reporting lines through the HR coordinators, HR partners, senior HR partner into UHR with the lead HR partner there. Today, and you've seen this slide before, with the exception of the red dotted line at the bottom. Okay, and we'll go into this a bit more a couple slides from now, but this is the red dotted line's purpose is to support and provide support and customer service alignments and escalate performance and compliance issues to the supervisor. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means as we keep moving on. But this is the updated HR service delivery structure. How many of you were able to see this before you came in today? Okay, great, good homework, participation. So a few small clarifications I want to address right off the top. You'll notice that the blue box that used to say lead HR partner now says AVP. This slide is showing the academic division, okay? And you'll see that the provost office has what I'm going to call a light gray box, signifying that that's where the faculty support comes from, UHR. There's no changes to how UHR is supporting faculty. So I wanted to call that out. For those of you not in the academic division, okay, picture this by taking that solid line coming from the SVP box in the provost office and covering up that gray box and taking off a P in the yellow box. So SVP without that box, and that would show your other divisions. Also, you'll notice the red dotted lines indicating the staff recruiting specialist. And we'll talk more about that as we work through. Oh, one other thing. In this case, in this model, before all the coordinators just said S, and I've just depicted that the coordinator, there are 2 coordinators for Unit A. Okay, just to help you see that. That was a question that was coming up. Folks couldn't see that. That doesn't mean there's a max of 2. That's not what that is. Numbers have not been defined, but just to help folks be able to see that better. Okay, as we work into the HR roles and responsibilities. So where we are today, I was able to incorporate a lot of the feedback that you've provided. The handouts you have still say draft. Okay, and part of the reason that is because when we're able to more fully spend time with finance and see their model, we want to make sure that we're still cohesive in our approach and that we haven't left out a whole group of folks in this process. So that's why we're still draft. Things may still change. Will they change drastically? I wouldn't expect that, okay, from an HR perspective. So the class comp review, last time I was here, I said, well, we're going to share job profiles, right, being a new term. I said, oh, we're thinking about, do we move this along and kind of preempt the review and start thinking future state? That's too heavy of a load. We've had a chance to take a look at what that would look like in terms of modifying our current systems for a very short period of time while we'd work through this. It isn't practical. And so we will not implement brand new classifications for this. There will be working titles, but we won't implement brand new classifications for this because of those complexities. But you'll note that there are minimum qualifications, and we're using current qualifications in the profile handouts or in the job information handouts. So we're not calling it a job profile. From a technical perspective, what we've provided to you is actually more robust than a job profile. But you'll also notice that it doesn't look like a position description does today, where there's 30% this and 50% that, right? And so it's high-level summary information about the job. At the point we get really in the weeds, which won't be today, we'll talk about how that relates to transactions, business processes within Workday, those types of things, a day in the life. And I'll give some examples here as we work through this. Okay, the HR coordinator reports to the HR partner, a solid line. If you have your handouts to reference what that looks like, let me give you an example of what an HR coordinator may do from a future state. Likely they would run a report within Workday of approaching end dates. If we think about employees with needing contracts renewed, right? So those appointment renewals, they will be running a report that looks out and forecasts when those are coming up. And then they're able to begin to work with stakeholders. Okay, that may be the HR partner, that may be the manager of those individuals, to talk about, okay, the renewal is coming up. Here's one time I'm going to talk about funding. Is there funding, right? They're going to go talk to the finance team, talk to their folks on the budget side to say, is funding still available? Are there other things that we need to know about before we might launch this renewal? There are no paper renewals in future state. Let that resonate. There are no paper renewals in future state. And so from that perspective, they're able to work with those stakeholders, talk about the next steps, be able then to kick that off to the employee and have that done in plenty of time before that end date of that appointment. So they can forecast this out, and they're going in advance. They may say, hey, we need to hold off for a couple more weeks till we get more information, and that's their responsibility to track that and make sure that those things are taking place. But that's likely something that HR coordinator may do, and again, working with broad stakeholders to be able to do that. In the HR partner role, they're responsible for executing the HR strategies, policy programs, address the unique needs of those supported units. The HR partner reports to the senior HR partner. The HR partner is likely working with the managers in the unit to help support workforce planning. This is not something, some of you may do this at a local level, but this isn't something that we've had the tools to consistently do from a university perspective. And we would hope that those HR partners are meeting with the finance teams, are meeting with managers to talk about what are our workforce needs. Maybe you're adding a new major. What does that mean? How does that look? How are we supporting that? How are we shifting? Maybe talking about what the recruiting market looks like and how those are challenging times to fill certain jobs, and what might need to be done in terms of planning. may also be where you talk about professional development. Do we have money for additional professional development to help folks advance on their career path? It's that workforce planning. Do we have the right folks with the right skill sets to help advance the department? And that's more of than just talking about HR, right? That's about all employees and how we help support that. So they'd be working with a team of individuals to be able to plan, provide advice, and help leaders be able to make decisions about shifts and changes that may need to be done. They also may advise on how a job is classified or posted, advise on temporary options for managing work. I've gotten that call from a manager where 2 employees resigned on the same day. Just happened, okay? Both had other offers, a great thing. However, whoa, how are we gonna get work done in the short term? We've got students to serve. And so really thinking through creatively how we might be able to achieve that. And an HR partner would be involved in those conversations. They also may be evaluating compensation recommendations, thinking about equity, thinking about market, how to support those impacts to their unit. If we turn now to the senior HR partner, this role certainly collaborates with UHR and the divisional SVP to ensure the optimal and consistent experience for all staff and faculty. So they're reporting to the AVP, they have a dotted line to the SVP, and they're managing that workload throughout the organization. Another key component is that they're likely helping development plans for HR staff throughout their organizational structure. They're working on project management. As UHR says, hey, we have this new initiative, there's likely information that we're going to need help from them on. For example, let's say Workday has new functionality. We want that information from the field. What do they need? How does this impact? What are the tools or training resources? Do we have the capacity to do that right now? What are those strategies for successful adoption of those of the technology or a different way of doing business? And helping to coordinate the identification of those issues. I would expect them to be involved in some project management from a UHR perspective. Again, helping us to deliver those programs with the local needs, right? Each division has a little bit of its own culture. We still want that culture to ring through, and the senior HR partner will help us to be able to do that in each of those areas. Okay, as we think about what stays local versus what would be in the model, this is some of that homework we've been working on. So hourly student hiring is likely still something that I would imagine to be local. I've said still in development. Okay, we're working through that right now in testing. But gone are the days of the temporary enrollment form, XH enrollment form. That form doesn't exist in future state. It happens inside Workday, okay? But we know we want to be responsive. Students need hired. You don't need weeks for that to happen. And so we want to make sure that at the local level that information is being shared. Timekeeping. Today, that's a local process. It looks different in Workday. For those of you that spend your time calculating shift diff and other holiday and all kinds of other types of pay, you won't have to do those calculations. But we still need support in helping payroll to run, right? We still need to make sure that hours are submitted, that employee's been off, hasn't been able to submit their hours, and go through a process to be able to do that. So we would expect to still have timekeeping support being local. Support for department chair for faculty performance review. So this is something when I've been spending time looking at PDs of folks doing multiple jobs, this is one of the things that I found in there. Again, support oftentimes for the department chair in scheduling faculty performance reviews and kind of kick in Workday. That will be about kicking off a process to have that completion form be that final result entered into Workday. And so we know that some of that will still be administrative in nature and need to take place. Interview scheduling and coordination. There's no way around this. You still always will need some level of support for interview coordination. Somebody's schedule always doesn't work, and we need to work through that. And so there'll be key role in the department, just as there is today, for folks to help with that. Preparation of tenure materials is something else that I've found in some of these PDs that were in folks' HR section when I looked at the PD. And so that's indexing the materials, sending out letters, doing a lot of those things to create that packet. We would see and expect that those would still stay local, okay? But if you look across on this one and where an HR partner might come into play inside the model is if someone says, I want a tenure clock extension. The HR partner may be supporting them and helping them to get those questions answered, okay? And graduate assistant appointments. In the old days, maybe they still are, Carl, called graduate secretaries? No, what are we called now?
So program coordinators or grad.
Okay, program coordinators or grad secretaries. We intend to still have graduate assistant appointments be done locally. Note that that is only talking about the HR functionality. I recognize there's tuition scholarship, there's all those other things for a different presentation. So those elements will still be here. Likely that may still flow into the model, some of those approvals, some of those types of things, but being able to have that initiation. We know you have to be responsive to get those offers out to graduate assistants quickly. We also know that we need to be responsive to their payroll. It's one of those areas we are oftentimes a little bit behind on. So I'm excited to have worked with Dean Graves of the Graduate College to talk about how we might be able to train folks that are already assigned in these duties to help them understand their workday role that they'll have, as well as help them understand the payroll impacts and those types of things. So we hope to provide more training in a partnership with the Graduate College in order to address this. Many of you are doing it great. The process will be different. We want to make sure we're supporting you in that. And again, making sure that our graduate assistants are getting their offers and having a great experience as they come on campus. When we think about those things within the HR model, support for international faculty, staff, postdocs, and visitors. This one has come up. Some areas don't do this very often. Others of you do a lot. And those of you that do a lot are oftentimes the folks that are the hotline for everyone else. So we appreciate you. One of the things, though, we do anticipate is to create a level set and a standard around how this is supported. We appreciate ISSO working with us to more closely support those needs as we move forward. So some of those SciStart requests and the receive and deliver those immigration documents, that would likely be what would be happening within the HR model. There's likely still coordination with managers to maintain a local position description. We've talked about that detail of the percentages not living. You don't have to do that before you post the job. But there is an element of position information that we still need to know for performance management, for workers' compensation, for disability accommodations. And so we know that we're going to need to partner with HR folks and supervisors to ensure that we do that. Doesn't have to be as laborious as we do today, but we know that we're still going to need that information. Employee accommodation requests. Overall, that's still going to be managed through UHR. Leslie Ginder, if you saw the recent article on her work in Inside Iowa State, she'll still be overseeing and responding on behalf of the university for employee accommodations. But what we know is likely we can have better outreach, better collaboration, local units, having trained folks be able to provide that information and recognize in advance before oftentimes we get called way too late because we don't see that on the ground. Staff interview support, we'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute. So this is likely what we're anticipating is activities that will remain local or those that will be folded in to these job profiles from a workday or consultation perspective. So let's go back to that updated service delivery structure. So we've added the HR recruiting specialist here, staff recruiting specialist. So this is a direct result of feedback from you, HR professionals across campus. I'd like to read a comment in the climate survey. I have been going back inside the climate survey to review that feedback to see how that impacts the model as we're moving forward. And this is a survey respondent to the climate survey. It takes an extremely long time to hire new positions when people leave ISU, and that creates extra workload for those that remain. That really resonates with me. Our average time to fill right now is, I think, 112 days for staff positions. That's after you get it through the PD process. Oy. You feel it, right? You're doing your neighbor's job, potentially, while this process is working through. I've been here 10 years. For 10 years, this has been an issue. This is our opportunity to think about it differently. So when we've been evolving this model, okay, it wasn't, hey, let's put staff recruiting specialists here. We started thinking about this HR coordinator and all the things that are in that HR coordinator's responsibility. It's pretty diverse. Likely still having hundreds of people to support, right? And so when we think about that, and you think about the balance between, hey, I got to make payroll, or hey, I have this offer, or I have these people admin actions, if I'm talking in current state, right? What wins? Normally it's payroll, okay? And so if we stack the deck too much in that HR coordinator role, what we've done is not given them an opportunity to support that candidate experience and really support employees at Iowa State, right? You've said it takes an incredibly long amount of time, and we move the workload while we wait, right? There's other comments within the climate survey that also reflect similarly. So this role would only support staff recruiting needs. Faculty, no. Faculty processes, I'm not touching, okay, from this box, okay? Likely HR partners are still supporting faculty searches. Those are being posted at a local level, not by UHR talent acquisition, okay? Some of this is reflective of what many of you have in your local areas. So when I was building out and thinking about this model, that would have been a loss of service for some of your areas. And we know you said, this is why we feel like our employees are happy to be here, because we aren't transferring that workload. We are able to fill those positions faster. So the intent of this is not to create a net new positions. Okay, so let me walk through that. If the work isn't in the staff recruiting specialist role, it's likely in the HR coordinator role, and there would be more HR coordinators. But again, if we're in competition of do I make payroll or do I have these interviews, you're probably working to refine those payroll items, okay? And so what this does is elevate and allow those folks to focus on the candidate experience, the supporting the manager. We're not taking away the decision from the manager. I'm going to say that again. We are not taking away the decision from the manager. A hiring manager is still the decision maker, who they get to hire. What we're doing is supporting them through that process. Folks, there are many managers, thousands, 1,200, 1,300, something like that. 1,300, sorry, I didn't mean thousands. 1,300 or so managers on campus. And many of you don't hire on an everyday basis. Some of you, it's routine. You have all the tools and tips and tricks because that's what you do, and it's like clockwork. Other areas, when a vacancy comes, it's disheartening and stressful for folks in terms of preparing for that. So, the hiring manager is key in the decision making. The staff recruiting specialist is likely, if I put it in present day terms, doing many of the things that the hiring manager does, that the posting admin does, and that UHR talent acquisition does. Okay, I'm not trying to talk in code, but in present tense, there are different folks in each one of those things. And so that's why that posting goes through multiple places. We're also not attempting to post before anyone's seen it, right? Again, we want the manager to say, yes, this is it. That's what I want. So this position reports directly to the senior HR partner. And at first glance, I've had a lot of folks say, why did you do that? So when you think about it, if that staff recruiting specialist has a solid line to the HR partner here, let's say right beside the HR coordinators, okay? If that's a solid line, how do unit B and C feel? Probably that A might be getting preferential treatment, okay? And we know that the workload across there isn't always the same. A, B, and C all have different hiring patterns from a time of the year or frequency, those types of things. And so by aligning that to the senior HR partner, that then allows that senior HR partner to help balance the workload, help make sure each of the unit's needs are prioritized, and so we don't get kind of off kilter in that support. And in today's world, when a manager has two top candidates, what happens to the second one? Oftentimes we say, hey, continue to look for the website. We hope you apply for something else, right? Let me hope I get my statistic right. Within a 2-year period, over 200 individuals applied at least more than once for an administrative assistant position. Okay, so that's more of us in this room. And someone else is looking at them, someone else is looking at them, someone else is looking at them. This creates a community then to share candidates, to say, my number two, I got this great one, maybe it's just about who's available first. They were equally qualified, equally great, but this candidate could come first. This one needed to wait 3 months. Let's find a way to make sure that candidate is supported. We currently have the second lowest unemployment in the nation here in Story County. You feel that in your hiring practices today. And we can't use the same tools that we did 10 years ago today, right? The candidates are looking for something different. Lots of research say that if the candidate doesn't get that first job, they're gone. We have to keep them here. We are competing for top talent. And not just who's the best out of the pool, we want top talent here. We have to think about it differently. So we want to do better, we want to support managers, and we want to give it the opportunity and care and support as we think about moving this forward and doing it right. So, the staff recruiting specialist, and I would expect I'll provide more information online as I recognize my timeline here. So the staff recruiting specialist works with the hiring authority, the manager, okay, to create a recruitment plan. That's where am I going to post? Where do you think the candidates are going to come from? What's the timing of the posting? When's everybody ready for interview? Whole series of things. Not just post and pray, like I hear some folks talk about today. Post the position, supports the advertising. They're making those advertisement reach outs. They're identifying, sourcing, and engaging the candidates. That can also help to support the passive candidate, right? They can go out and say, hey, have you heard about Iowa State? I'd like for you to come here. This isn't a headhunter, okay? If you've heard that term before, there's a balance here. And it's not, I would say, from a professional HR perspective, it's not a true recruiter. It's a little bit in the middle, okay? They're able to screen the qualifications and perform those phone screens. I, as a manager, can get the top candidates, whatever I choose, 5, 6, I can see all of them. As a manager, I can still see all of them, okay? But that's a partnership between this role, between the HR partner and the manager as we move forward. They assist with the scheduling of interviews, doing the reference checks, maintaining the connection to those high potential candidates, and assist with the final offer and negotiations. Okay, the manager, not much has changed. Still making the final hiring decision. They're working with someone more directly now to be able to do that. In UHR, we've been piloting this for the last 2 years. Okay? Life-changing for me as a manager. I appreciate it. Yes, my searches, I run through the pilot. And so I've really enjoyed that and have had benefits of that. So let me tell you about 2 of those searches that we've piloted. Okay, one, there was a hiring manager trying to hire a clerical position. The job had been reposted multiple times, and the manager wasn't getting the applicant traffic that they had wanted. Again, thinking, hey, it's a clerical job, likely Story County, great people here. Ooh, felt the unemployment rate quickly. And so through those multiple postings, they had 7 candidates. Okay, probably 30 days had already passed or so. Okay. The manager contacted UHR and said, help. And we said, well, sure, we'd like to. We're happy to. We offered to support the search. After changing the job summary to help the job look more appealing to candidates, the manager soon had 27 applicants. Okay. That resulted in a handful of candidates that they could pick from, and ultimately they chose a candidate that had the industry experience that they were looking for. Another position was a failed search. Had posted it. It failed twice. Okay? That's a horrible feeling as a manager, and those coworkers as well. They called and asked for help. We changed the working title, changed the job summary. 31 candidates came into the role or came into the posting for evaluation. We were able to screen those and provide the manager with the top 3. Okay? There's success here. We've been able to pilot this, and we have great satisfaction from the managers who have had experience in this. I want to share more about this, and we'll likely do that through the Worksite website as we work over the next weeks or so. We think this is really critical, again, to thinking differently about how we support employees. Those of you that are here that have to do the work when someone's gone, the manager who's still trying to get it done in that process, and supporting the HR function, okay? So I want to talk about the draft transition process. Draft. Notice I'm saying draft. Right, Peter? IELT Supergroup haven't even really been able to talk about this yet. And so I'm here today to say, as an HR professional, likely some of the things that we can anticipate, whether that moves up in a month or back. We're committed to making sure you know in advance, okay, as best we can. And so what I'm really sensitive to is I had a couple folks stop me and say, was anything going to happen over Thanksgiving? We want you to be able to take time off over Thanksgiving, okay? We're not going to have a job fair over Thanksgiving. We're good, okay? I want you to take your time away. So we want to give you enough advance notice so you're here and you can plan. We know that's really important to you in making these decisions. So draft transition, you'll notice I have months along the top. Here we're, in this phase, we're creating the framework. This is a lot of internal facing items, okay, stuff that's on my to-do list. I want to make sure I can Everybody help me check off bullet 3. That was a little bit of satisfaction yesterday when I was able to do that. Thank you, Emma, in helping with that. And so these are a lot of internal-facing tasks for Supergroup, for HR, for finance, as we work through next steps. And so the IELT will provide a report to the president. I talked about that at the beginning, and share that report with campus. We're going to IELT, hopefully the Supergroup will get together. I should say Supergroup here. I intend that this is all Supergroup. So the IELT will discuss concepts for the transition process. We'll go through and really drill into what are all the elements we need. From an HR perspective, we shared the draft descriptions of the roles and finance is soon to come. We're working to develop and finalize an EO-ISD transition plan. What does that mean, right? We want to outline what this takes to be able to stand this up. We know our current policies aren't built around this type of transition, this transformation. And so one of the things we need to think about is likely reducing our postings for some of these competitive jobs to a minimum of 7 days. Okay, minimum. Doesn't mean we're going to have a great candidate in 7 days, but it gives us the ability, if one is in there, that we can continue to move forward, okay? Because we know time is of the essence, as that timeline isn't very long. There are other elements that will be in that plan, and we will share that very soon when it's available. It also may be updated, again, as the elements more come into focus. But we want to outline and have transparency on that process. Develop the unit transition strategy for senior leadership. So this is, in my world, what I think is a survey to senior leadership to learn a little bit more about what's happening in their areas that we might need to account for in the next year, year and a half. Is there an accreditation process going on? Are there two departments merging or separating? Those types of things that we know carry an additional a burden or work that's going to have to take place. We want to be able to account for those things in the short term. So I need to hear, and I think finance wants to hear some of what that feedback is and how that might reflect on our short-term work. We want to develop the interest survey for staff and the evaluation matrix of the information that you send back. So the last time I said we're looking to not have a people admin approach to this, okay? That if you want to come into the model, we're trying not to say, fill out the application, do all these things. We know we want to cause minimal disruption, but there are some things that we need to know about you, okay? Your name, what position you might be interested, what unit you might be interested in supporting, or multiple units. A little bit about maybe your education so we can help qualify. We don't have the best information in UHR about that. Even if you've been here a long time, we don't have the best information about that. And so more information about you, your interests, and likely you'd be answering some questions that would help us then be able to qualify you in the process. Again, we want to, the evaluation matrix, we want to be able to identify those criteria well in advance and publicize that to all of you. Okay, so both of those things is really important. The unit alignment, that's after this. My focus for the rest of the week is to try to figure out draft unit alignment, or at least bringing that information together. SUPORG closed yesterday. We're still at 1,000 errors, or 1,000. Okay. Appreciate all of you getting the SUPORG done. There are about 1,000 orphaned employees, as we call them in the structure, that we need to identify and clean up before I can do that, run that data. And so needing those unit alignments and the number of associated roles. How many roles are going to be at each level and what that takes. We'll likely post an interview for the AVP roles, both on the finance and the HR side. The idea of posting the AVP role is so that they're available to help us implement this path forward, and they would have input in the transition and help support its success. In January, Now keep in mind there's break in there, right? A lot of work is still going to be done over break in order to share in January. We'll likely be looking at holding the job fair, sending that employee interest survey. We know we need the units defined before we can send the interest survey. That's something you want to know. You also want to know who your supervisor is. So we need to work through that. Identify the unit transition teams. And this is a concept that I hope Supergroup has a chance to talk about soon. We know that as individuals choose to a position in the model or remain local, if someone comes into model, there's likely other things that might stay locally. There are things that a local person was doing that they won't do anymore. And we know that we need support and an organized approach to helping supervisors, to helping units look at that in total in order to make those adjustments. We also want to draft service commitments. I don't know if this will be what we call it, but essentially, what can you expect from someone doing work inside this model? What's their turnaround time? What's the feedback mechanism? What's that commitment that we have on the level of service? And we want to outline that and start to have those discussions. And some of that's about dealing with the other new things that we don't know about that you all will tell us through this process about, is it in the model or does it remain local? And so we want to have that coordinated approach. Again, no Iowa State are left behind. And we know that much of that has to be done at a local level. In February, we'd expect to have the AVP and senior HR partner in place, complete that evaluation matrix from the interest survey. That's when we're starting to allow, you may be saying, oh, I found out who this person was as my supervisor. That may influence my change, influence my path. Identify those matched positions, meet with units to finalize those HRP roles, and draft a training plan and strategy. And a lot of the training plan and strategies already taking place, but there's some big holes that we need to fill as this information becomes available. In March, we're likely meeting with the units and staff to finalize all those roles, develop individual transition plans. This is where whether you're choosing a position inside the model or not, everybody's creating this, and then we're looking at the information from those plans as a whole. Continuing to understand what we haven't thought of and what might stay outside the model, and develop the training and job aid content. In April, likely continue to work through those transition teams to coordinate transitions in the departments, execute those transition plans, and begin to deliver training. So we've said from an HR perspective, this is likely how we intend to fill those roles. AVP will likely be the first out of the gate, followed by that senior HR partner. We will offer to the senior HR, offer to the AVP before we would bring on that senior HR partners. Okay. And so when we think about identifying employees for ISD roles, and as they think about completing that interest survey, again, we're looking at the interest. We might be evaluating the current alignment. I want to stay local versus I want to go over here. Well, let's see what that does. Is there someone still to stay local? We need to talk through that. Their experience and qualifications, the functional, meaning HR or finance, their input, as well as the supervisor's input, the potential customer, that unit's input, and also internal references and job descriptions. I think there's a balance there. Recognize that some of you may not have HR responsibilities now, but want to come into the model and may have experience that you want to contribute there. So job descriptions aren't the be-all, end-all as we look at this. But we were seeking to be minimally disruptive and then ensure that the employee has a voice in this process. Let's get to next steps. So some information to expect from what I'll call ISD. So follow up from the deliverables on that earlier slide. So the November to December, we have a lot to give to you. And so we hope that we'll be able to provide much of that soon. And the president will continue to provide updates to you. What you can do in the short term, review these profiles. Okay, send me questions. Ask me, did you think of this? Those types of things. But review those and start thinking about how that fits with you personally and what your career goals might be. Continue to submit that feedback and attend upcoming workshops. I'll talk a little more about some of the additional support HR is providing. Many of you are also attending Workday workshops. There was a procurement one this morning. Anybody go? Okay, great. I'm glad to see that. And so continue to learn about Workday, continue to go to some of these other UHR workshops that we're going to have. And I would imagine there'll be more town halls as well. So appreciate Stephanie Downs from UHR providing some additional information here. So UHR will be offering Staying Charged Through Change, as well as Mindfulness Matters. I don't believe as of this morning that they're up on Learn, but be looking by the end of the week. We just got rooms confirmed yesterday, as you can all probably relate to. And so these will be happening in early December. And then, of course, hopefully you all have the Limeade app and are tracking your wellness progress, and she'll continue to have additional challenges out there for you. But well-being will be also providing Rethinking Resilience, Coping in Our Everyday. Looks like it's slotted for December 5th. And a purpose workshop. Explore the value of aligning every day with purpose. Create your own purpose statements to guide your work and life. So visit the Wellbeing website and learn to sign up for more information. And then this was available, I think, in the first town hall of other support that's available for employees as well. As I close this portion, I want to talk through these questions. How will this impact me? That still remains a personal question, okay? But I want to cover will my job change? If you're doing HR or finance, your job will change, whether you choose to go into the model or not, in some way, shape, or form, especially if you're wearing both hats, okay? Workday in itself will create our jobs to change. Where would I sit? Okay, we've heard from some of you saying, if I go in the model, please don't leave me where I'm at, because I'm afraid everyone will continue to ask me to do all these other things that I'm no longer responsible for. Whew. So there's sensitivity on both sides, right? We need to think through this. What I can tell you is likely every department doesn't have someone inside the model sitting locally, okay? And so where that person, your support person, who is your point of contact sits, we want that to be as local as possible. Will that directly be in your department? I'm not certain, okay? Depends on if they're there now or not, is probably one likely factor from an HR perspective. Do I have a choice? Yes. Okay? Many of you have said, I'm here because I want to learn more, but I really like staying where I'm at. That's okay. You have a choice to stay. Okay? You also have a choice to determine if you want to come into the model and take one of these new roles. Where would I report to? Hopefully through this, you've seen, at least from the model perspective, who those supervisors would be in that reporting relationship. How that looks locally for you, if you choose to stay in the local unit, your supervisor may be one of the folks that are coming and transitioning into the model. Again, that's something that is a local decision on where you will report. Okay. So I want you to continue to submit your feedback through the worksite website, and we're going to continue to provide more information on the FAQ and through the website. But want to turn it over to answer some of your questions. We've got some cubes and some cube assistants. Appreciate their help. But if you would like to ask a question, feel free to raise your hand and we'll make sure you get a cube. I'll also offer that I'm going to stay afterwards. I think there might be an event in here, is that right? No, I'm okay. I'm okay. That I can stay around for those folks that are here locally and may want to ask a more personal question. I'm happy to do my best and stay and answer those. For those of you that are watching remotely, feel free to email me and I can respond as best as I can. I really encourage you, if at all possible, to submit your feedback online. You can do that anonymously, and that is likely because then all of Supergroup sees that feedback, and we can track all that information and make sure that it doesn't get lost. So who else? Who has questions? I promise these ladies are quite kind. And the box does not bite. Okay, we got one down here. Thank you.
Just so it's not a total waste of your time. So the new position about the recruitment, specialist recruitment, so is that taking kind of a layer out of the search committee process? Does the search committee no longer review all of the candidates, but those are weeded out? And that's in the weeds, I know.
So are we talking about staff or faculty? Staff. Okay. So how many years ago? 4? 4 years ago, UHR said, unless it's P37 or higher, I'm looking for my answer bank up there, that search committees aren't required. Okay? Some of you, I may have just been dropping that fact on you today as I see some go. So we do not require them. Okay? You do not need multiple people to be reviewing candidate information. Hiring manager can review and make those choices as long as they're following the university protocol. Okay? So, some units are still requiring search committees. Okay? I know that to be true. Our encouragement is that we're engaging stakeholders rather than search committees. How many of you have 10 people in a room and everybody's debating over calculation of years and no one can come up right, and we have these laborious spreadsheets and formulas and, okay? We don't need to do all of that. There's a different way of doing it from a qualifications perspective. So a search committee can still be involved. The search committee may want to review the overall information that the staff recruitment specialist provided, and review that. They also may just serve as interview panelists, right? Stakeholders in that process. So there's lots of different ways to see that. Search committees are not required for staff positions for P37 or below. Revolutionizing what we're doing here. But we know we need to give managers better support. More questions? Sarah?
So merit staff was conspicuously absent from any of the PDs that were up there.
Yep. So we're still working through some of that. And part of that is the laws around HR and merit staff doing HR work that relate to collective bargaining. Those folks are determined to be confidential. And so we're looking at that. That's still an open question for me as we look at that narrow population and how that might look. We're still working with finance about how that, again, that's why we're in draft, how we all complement each other in that process. So great question.
Maybe you covered this, but on your slide previous, there was a question that said, what is a unit? Or what are the units? I think a lot of people are very confused by that, what a unit is, because are they departments? Are they colleges? What are they?
They likely have a lot of people. Then they're not a unit. They're a part of a unit. Okay? So, what is a unit?
But
So essentially,
there's a follow-up here. Yeah, what did you say?
oh, sorry.
I was just saying, what if there's just a few in the department, that it's a smaller department?
Then it's likely not a unit. It's a part of a unit. Okay? So that is the question that I'm trying to answer. And so we're looking at a variety of data from the HR perspective. That's why we need the soup org. How many of you are involved in this supervisory organization structure collection? Thank you all. Thank you all for helping us as a part of the transformation. This is huge. That data that you've just been working so hard is what I am waiting for and one of the factors in helping to determine a unit. So employee headcount's likely something. I want to see supervisor headcount. Data I've never had before. Okay? I want to see staffing from recruitment trends. That's a factor for me. And then complexities. Okay? And that may mean different things for different areas.
So basically you're saying they're not really defined.
Yep. And that's why I didn't answer that question. That's why we'll come back together, okay? And we need to work on this, but we really need this data to help us to be able to see what all those factors are. So from an HR perspective, again, we've got these 1,000 orphaned employees that we need to clean up, and then I can get my hands on that data. Jessica? Hi.
Sorry, I've lost my voice.
Oh, my.
The transition plans,
Yep.
how are employees' voices being heard in developing these plans? Everything I've ever read, learned about change management means you involve the people who are affected by the change.
Yep.
And so I'm just curious what steps are going to be taken to hear employees' voices.
Yep, I would imagine we're going to have some focus groups. We're going to do some other things to engage employees. We are not there yet. I need to answer that lady's question before I can get to what those transition plans really look like. So I would expect us to give employees an opportunity to react and to provide additional information. Box, Mark.
For the HR coordinators, could you envision a delineation of duties between, like if you have two coordinators serving a unit, depending on the type of work they do and how their unit, is academically, could you envision those coordinators taking on slightly different nuances of roles within the unit? Or would they be both, processing transactions equally across a full breadth of functions, day-to-day business transactions?
I'm going to give a squishy answer here, okay? In general, we need to have consistency. We need to be able to support the unit and that the workers within that unit are able to support that. So both the coordinators having knowledge, because they're likely backing each other up, right? So we need to have that foundation. But Mark, maybe you have a passion in that international staff faculty support, right? And you may be the guru and have the opportunity to advance and become that expert in that area. And so again, as those development plans are managed throughout the division and throughout the model, I would assume that we're seeking your feedback on those areas that you feel strengthened or that you want to grow in as an employee, okay? That's probably not a 7-1-19 discussion. Again, as we stand up and everybody becomes proficient, then that gives us those opportunities to have that. So great question.
So if a unit is a lot of people, and
technical definition?
if you're a part of a unit and you don't have a lot of people, and now all the lines are solid up to HR. Have you talked about how these people, who pays for these people? What's the model for how you appropriate costs?
I'd like to defer that to the next town hall meeting. A question that Interim Senior Vice President Kane is anticipating and is working on. Certainly, we know that's top of mind. Many of you have come to me to say, oh, UHR doesn't have a lot of money. Can you afford us? We have to have a model where we're not robbing Peter to pay Paul and everybody, we don't implode, right? That's really important, the health of this. And so, and not making it complicated. And I know that's what Pam Kane and her team are working on. So great question, stay tuned. Is there another box? Oh, down here?
Okay, my question is, will all the HR and the finance positions be posted at the same time? Because if now a lot of us do all of it, so
Yeah.
we want to see them all.
Yeah, that would be my hope, is that we're able to step out together, because I recognize you're doing both and you want to be able to see before you make that choice, okay? I'm not here today to have you choose HR, right? This is a personal question. We want you to do what's right for you and what makes sense, but we want you to have all the information before you make that decision. So great question. We would anticipate that both sides, and we'll step together. Yep, up here.
Can we still expect a decision from President Winterstein before Thanksgiving?
So decision, I'm going to say, is not a binary one. Likely a path forward and what her expectations are. I would expect her to again, supergroup, we anticipate to provide her with information yet this week. And as she's available, I would expect her to provide a response soon. Megan, is that okay, what I just said? Anything you want to clarify? Peter, anything you want to clarify? Oh, let me get you a box.
The way I understand it is we have a status plan that we'll submit to President Winterstein, and so she will react to that status plan.
Yep.
And as you said, it's not a yes or no.
Yep. Hi.
About if employees will be formally notified that they're impacted by this, like say in December, or the job fair just happens in January and you assume that if you do HR or finance, you're impacted and you should be applying?
Yeah, we really don't have a way to say it's you, and you, okay? So, and what I abandoned a couple weeks ago was trying to determine at an individual level who all those folks are. Because every place I turned, it was, oh, that's bad data, oh, that's bad information, and we don't have a lot of time to clean that up. So likely the invitations to the career fair, those types of things are more broad, and we would want you to come and learn more, okay? We got one over here.
My question is for the folks that want to go into the HR or finance model, what if they don't meet the minimum qualifications but want to go into that model? How do we handle that?
Yeah, we're still working through what that looks like. Likely, they would still need to meet the minimum qualifications, but what we've done in part of the modeling is leaving that pretty broad. Now, the next question will be, are there levels within each of those? And those levels, I think, are still something that we're working through. That unit information likely helps us to determine that. Great question. About 10 minutes left. More questions? Okay, with that, I appreciate all of you coming in the cold today to join me. Don't be a stranger. I'll be around if you have personal questions that you want to cover. Thank you so much.